Welcome to Convicted Hearts. I am Jen, your host, and tonight I have the privilege, or today I should say, I have the privilege of being here with Mia and Eddie, also known as Lovely Hue Photography. And you guys are quite the power couple. I've been seeing you all over the place recently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
How are
We're
you guys?
we're doing
Glad.
good. We're doing good. Yes. We've been busy, especially this week. So man, we really haven't had time to catch up and rest a bit. But we're excited to be here. We're excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you guys. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Mia, I'm going to start with you and let's kind of just catch everybody up on, if they're new to your story, sort of where you're comfortable starting out. You know, what was your life like coming up, and, you know, sort of how you found yourself being incarcerated and where we are today. We'll get into that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the San Fernando Valley and immediately got caught up in the lifestyle that that we get into, and it's a path that led me to prison for 12 years, and I think it was really hard on me only because I was 6 months pregnant when I got arrested, and and then I went into solitary confinement for 3 years, and it started off with me being pregnant, and so I dealt with a lot of mental health issues like PTSD and anxiety and postpartum depression, and then it was a very difficult journey, especially as a woman, to basically grow up in an environment like that and give birth there. I gave birth handcuffed to a hospital bed when I was in county jail fighting my case, and that's a road that would break a lot of people and break a lot of women, and I kind of share my story in the hopes that somebody that's going through what I went through can find strength in that, and know that if somebody else can get through it, then they can get through it. So I share my story in the hopes that it gives other women hope, inspiration, and just courage to get through whatever it is that we're going through.
Yeah, I definitely can see that in sort of how you speak and even the work that you do. When you were speaking about being pregnant while doing your, while being incarcerated, can you give me a little more, maybe so people can understand what does that look like? Were you, how do you feel like you were treated, with compassion? Do you feel like that was given at all?
So like I was we're treated like dogs in there. We're worse than animals. We're treated like we're treated pretty bad, and so it takes away from your, not only your self-esteem but your dignity, and it takes away from your humanity. Like you're made to feel like you're not even human, worth any compassion. And I remember I was in solitary confinement when I was pregnant. So I didn't get a lot of exercise. I didn't get a lot of sun. I didn't get a lot of vitamins. I didn't get any mental health help, and it's a very difficult journey as a woman to go through that. And this is all before I got convicted. And so, I remember the cravings that you get as a pregnant woman and not being able to satisfy those needs. And I remember like asking the COs for hot water. Like I was in Linwood County Jail at that time, and you would have to pretty much beg for hot water so that you can boil a noodle to eat. Because the food that they provided it was not really food. It was kind of just slop, and being pregnant, you need certain vitamins and you need certain nourishment for your baby to grow healthy, and I did not receive any of that. And that was a very difficult situation. Not only that, but I remember having to go to court and being chained. Like Like my wrist would be cuffed to my pregnant stomach, my ankles would be cuffed, so I could barely walk without stumbling, and I had to be really careful not to fall because that would endanger my child's life. And I remember like the COs not having any compassion, just like, come on, move, 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 or just all of it, begging for toilet paper, and then I think the hardest part was giving birth. So when I was handcuffed to that hospital, I remember the doctor asking the CO, like, is it necessary for her to be handcuffed? And anybody who's given birth, you can't, you cannot, I'm not running. There's nothing you can do. You are in so much pain that you're incapable of movement like that. And so I remember the CO saying no, like she will remain handcuffed to the hospital bed. And so all this stress and all this trauma that I was going through put my child in danger. And so I had to do an emergency C-section just because of all the stress that I was going through. It's hard to give birth just normally with your loved ones there, but I had a difficult time because I wasn't even treated as a human being, as a woman giving birth. This was my time to this I was giving birth to my most precious gift in this world, my son, and treated like I was not even human. So I suffered very bad from postpartum depression, and you can't even share what you're going through with anybody because you're in an environment where you cannot show weakness. And, going back to the county jail without my baby, just giving birth, it was rough. It was really difficult. And, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she remembered something, and so when she would come visit me, so when I was in solitary confinement, we would only have visits through glass for 15 minutes. It was very quick, very fast. But there was one time where she had to have a legal document given to me so I can give her guardianship of my son. And when she was giving me the papers, you can slide them through a slot, and so they have these little holes that you can actually, like, you can breathe through. And so I put my finger in those little holes to touch my son's foot, and my mom, and she was remembering this, and she was like, even the COs were screaming at me to put my hands down and not touch my newborn baby. And I think I went back to my cell, and I think I cried for like the rest of the day. I could not have human contact with my newborn baby. Like, that's hard. Like, I didn't have that bond with my son because I was stripped of that right. And it was a difficult it was just a difficult situation. And so right now we're fighting for women, for pregnant women's right to be able to um, protect them from situations that I've experienced.
I love that you're doing that and using your own personal pain and turning that into something that can be positive for other women that are experiencing what you went through. I'm so sorry. And that sounds, I can't imagine. I'm a mother as well. I'm a grandmother. I can't imagine how painful that must have been for you. Um,
Yeah, that was excruciating. And then you don't even get the mental health that you need going through
right.
something like that. So like you have to deal with this heartbreak, and it's hard. It took me many, many, many years working on myself to get back that self-esteem and grow that dignity back, and self-respect. When there's I'm sure there's people that say, oh, well, you put yourself in that situation, you get what you deserve. But like that, what happened, everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes your life is not perfect, and you try to do what you can. You try to make decisions that you think are best at that moment, and sometimes they're not the best, and so you end up in situations, but it does not take away from the person that I am. Once I was released, you know I do a lot for my community. I constantly give back. I go into different prisons. I speak at schools. I do a lot of advocacy. I work full time. I go to school full time. I run a photography business, and I'm also a mom. So if I didn't have that second chance, like, these are things that I would not have the opportunity to do, and it's all positive work that I've been working on, and so there's always, I believe in second chances,
Absolutely.
and I feel like everybody deserves that, and not everybody is bad. They can turn their lives around, and to put somebody down, you never know the good that they can do.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
can just imagine, like, I've always said with my, I have friends and family who have and are incarcerated, and we're all just either one decision away, or some of us could have been and just weren't caught. You just never know. You know what I mean? We've all been in circumstances, or a lot of us have anyways. And I think it's wonderful that you're being so vulnerable and sharing like what you experienced, because I've spoken with a lot of mothers who have been through some of the same, and you are doing something positive with, like I said, the pain that you've gone through. What, if you can explain, what does it look like for a mom right after you give birth? How much time were you given with your newborn?
So because I had an emergency C-section, I was able to stay in the hospital for 3 days. They did not let me breastfeed my baby. They took a lot of my I could not do anything. Like, I could hold him. I gave him a million kisses to last, for all the years that I knew that I was going to be away for, and I just try to give him as much love as I possibly could in those 3 days,
Yes.
and it was just really hard. I think I had to trust my mom and my dad, to raise my child up in a loving environment, which they did with their whole complete heart. They raised my children. Um, they brought them to visit me, and it's a difficult environment. There was a lot of times where I did not want to put my kids through that. It's a difficult experience for children to have to go into the prison, like experience like searches, and it's it's not a healthy environment, and to put your child through that. And so although I wanted to spend as much time with them as possible, I also wanted to protect them. And so what I did was I wrote like thousands of letters to both of them, and very, I just try to do the best that I could being a mother inside, and with the phone calls and the letters and a couple visits throughout the year, um, and that's how I had to mother, you know.
Right, right. So you were mothering from quite a distance at some point, right? You had been to Chowchilla and then CIW. Is that right?
Yeah, so I got sent up north because I was on level 4. I was very high, so I got sent to Chowchilla, and then immediately I tried to transfer to CIW just to get closer to home, and it took me 2 years, but I eventually got transferred, and those visits were much more frequent just because of the distance.
Right, right. It makes it a little easier anyways, right?
Yeah, it's hard for kids to be in cars for a long period of time, and so I really didn't want to put my children through any more stress, but they would come. My mom would bring them. Yeah. You know,
How im-
it's crazy, like thinking back at you know, when you start talking about the past like that, you remind yourself of all those experiences. And I was not the only one. Like there was a lot of women, you know, in the same boat as me, and I, you know, like I just it's almost like you just want to uplift each other, you know, and you understand like the pain that every woman's going through when it comes to their child and not being able to see them. And you know, most of my friends in there were all lifers and long termers, just because you, you know, you try to surround yourself with people that are going to be in there with you for a long period of time. It's really hard to see people go home, so you surround yourself with the lifers, and most of them were mothers, and so we're all in the same boat, you know. And so you kind of hold each other's hands through those hard moments, you know, like being a mother in there.
right. Yeah, I definitely have heard that as sort of for the women's side, anyways. It's almost like a little family unit that's kind of built around. Um,
Yeah, of
your sister.
course. You know, like you have your home girls in there, and you make families, because I think women are more emotional, and you know, we're very loving, no matter how what a woman has gone through, all the trauma that they've gone through. The women have an they just want to be loved, and they want to and they want to give love. And so in there, to protect that, you make families, right? You have a tia in there, you have a mom in there, you have primas in there, you know, you got like sisters and tias and everything. And you know, and you build those relationships, and I still have those relationships, even some of my homegirls that we've gotten out. And you know, I'm still their tias, and I'm still, you know, I'm still there, and we talk daily, and they're very supportive. I have a good support network.
Good. As far as people that, I'm sure it must be really difficult when, someone does go home. Like you said, you build a relationship with people, you build a family type feeling and relationship. How important is it to you that those people that are still there, they get to know and see or hear about how your life is going and the
So
possibility?
the great thing is, I paroled. Well, I did most of my time at CIW. That's where I spent most of my years. And so recently, I was able to go back into CIW, as you know, as a civilian, and I got to see. I didn't really tell anybody I was going to be in there. It was kind of like a surprise, and it was a great experience, only because those girls had seen me at my worst. You know, I was out of control in there, just trying to survive from all that mental, I guess,
Sure, yeah.
trauma. And you know, like, um, I was I did a lot of stuff in there to try to save my sanity by any means necessary, and so I was out of control in there. And I was, you know, surrounded by people doing the same thing. You know, we're trying to survive, uh, and cope with all the trauma and all the stuff that goes inside prison. You know, the sexual assault, the suicides, the just the degrading, and so you try to survive, and you do things in there to you do what you got to do in there to survive. And
Right.
so those women remember me in that way. So when I went back in, they were able to see my transformation, right? Everything that I've been doing in a positive environment, and that gives them hope. Like, okay, so Mia can go out from being like wild and crazy at CIW to coming out and you know, working full time, going to school full time, like really doing things in a positive way out here, advocating. And it gave them hope. Like, if I could do it, they can do it. A lot of them were worried about getting jobs, and I kind of shared my experiences about, you know, how I did it, how I got a job, and how I got a better job, and then how I just kept going, right? And so it gave them hope. I started at below minimum wage when my first job when I got out, and so I told them, like, sometimes we want instant gratification. We want the best right away, right? We want the job that pays $30 an hour.
Hmm.
But I didn't start out like that. Like I started out below minimum wage. And so just to show them like get whatever you can get whatever job you can get out and just work your way up slowly, right? And so just giving them a few tips on how I did it. And I think they were so happy to see all the good things that I've been doing, and it gave them a lot of hope also. And then, it was a lot of lifers in there. So, now I'm writing support letters in there and trying to help my friends get out.
Right. I love that. I love that you're doing that. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Shout out to you for that. That's amazing. Eddie, what was it like? I mean, for you going into kind of shifting, and you guys hadn't met yet, right? Until after.
Yeah, after we both were released. So just to share a little bit about my background. I was released last year in March after doing 22 years on a life sentence, which I received at the age of 19. Right. So prior to that, my upbringing was like during my early childhood, it was very unstable. Both my parents were teenage parents, 15, 16 years old with two kids already before the age of 18. My, father dealt with substance abuse and alcoholism, and we witnessed domestic violence. So that was the environment that me and my two siblings grew up in, during the early years of our life. And maybe about when I was like 7 or 8, we moved in with my maternal grandparents to San Gabriel Valley, right? And that's where I spent most of my adolescent years. So kind of I look at it like, it kind of rescued us at that moment from the just the things we were exposed to as kids, right? That weren't good for us. But I think at that point I already had developed like a lot of behavioral issues and my whole perception of the world, and growing up real rough, even amongst our family, like when we got together, our cousins, and there was a lot of instigating fights amongst us, and so the adults, the males, that was the type of environment they encouraged that behavior. So as a kid, I got in trouble a lot. Um, my parents separated when I was about 7 or 8. I would see my dad, seldomly, and sometimes during like Christmas vacation or summer vacation for like a week or two, and or sometimes he'd come down, and like there was moments where my mom just needed a break because I was misbehaving, and she'd send me with him for a week or so. And during the times that I was with him, um, we had a relationship which is strange, because he's supposed to be my father figure, but at the same time we had it like um more as of like almost like an older homie type of relationship where he seen the direction I was heading, and he never said anything like to try to steer me in a different direction. Kind of like he didn't encourage it either, but I think it was just normalized, like okay, like it's okay, like I see you hanging out with your friends. And even when I joined the gang at the age of at 12, it was like okay, just be careful. And so, and looking back, I remember a lot of times during these visits that I would stay with my dad. There was moments where he'd walk with me, and he'd go score heroin, right? And these are things that I witnessed as a kid. And he would have a talk with me like, "You're the man of the house." Because I had two siblings that were sisters, right? And so for me, these were the talks that he gave me, like you weren't allowed to like cry or complain about nothing. It was kind of like you were expected to fulfill a role of like the male figure at home, right? And kind of like I was too young to provide, but I was supposed to be the protector, right? And at the same time, he taught me to like be rough and stuff, right? So these are the things that the examples that my dad gave me growing up, and then it just continued, and I think it got worse, and like I started hanging around in the streets. So probably about the age of 10, I started running away from home, and it was just simply because it wasn't that I had a bad situation at home. My mom worked a lot. My grandparents were hardworking. They worked at factories. They did their best to provide whatever we needed, right? But I think for me, it's just like now that as an adult, I think I understand that I really did need a male figure, right, in my life. And then growing up, like going to school, like I was expelled, and I've shared this before, like with others, where I remember my principal in elementary school telling me that one of the times that I was sent to the office for misbehaving, and her telling me like, "Hey, you're gonna end up in prison," right? And this is a child that's like in the fourth grade. So these are the expectations of me. I didn't I don't, I didn't receive the help that I needed from authority figures that are supposed to like kind of intervene, ask questions, what's going on with you? Like, can we help you? Like, try to figure out why is it that I'm acting out, right? So the solutions for was always like, let's expel them, let's kick them out. Same thing where like kids in my neighborhood, like sometimes their parents are like, and I get it, like they didn't want me to hang around with their child because I was considered a troublemaker, right? So for me, so it kind of like came naturally where I gravitated towards other kids that were also, troublemakers or already starting to hang around with like gang members. And like I said, like at the age of 12, I joined the gang. I started getting arrested like at the age of 11. And from the age of 11 to the age of 19, when I was finally sentenced to life, I spent most of those years incarcerated, the camp, juvenile system, camp, YA system. When I committed my life crime, I was actually only out 2 months from YA. So from the age of 16 to 19, I spent in California Youth Authority, got out for 2 months, committed my life crimes, and then at 19, I was arrested for that and given a life sentence, right? Um, so my adolescence years, it really was spent a lot in detention centers, right? And then my young adult life as well, right? All my 20s, my whole 30s, until the age of 42 when I was released. I received originally a sentence of 14 to life. I seen the parole board 3 times before I was released after 22 years. And the only reason why I believe I was released because just the changes with the parole board process, the way that's done in these bills that, youth offender bills, right, that allowed me to go before the board and gave weight to the fact that I was a youth when I committed my crime, right, and it was based on the science of the brain, the adolescent brain that is not fully developed to the age of 25, and they give weight to that and diminished culpability and then the hallmarks of youth, right? Which you give into peer pressure and taking risks and not weighing consequences. All these things are taken into account when you go to board, right? And so I was found suitable, right, in 2023 last year in March. And so after 2 years, uh, while I was in there, I got in trouble a lot. I involved myself in a lot of the same activities that I was doing on the streets and before. And for me, it was kind of like, I remember just having a lot of anger still. I'm young, I'm in prison, I have a license with no hope of ever getting out. Just like a lot of the guys around me, a lot of the men, I'm sent to a level 4 yard where you're not treated as a child or somebody that's, oh, okay, he's younger or none of that. Like you're expected to be just like everybody else, and you're held to the same standard, same rules apply. And so for me, although I grew up in the system and I was familiar with things, it just prison, it's just, it takes on a whole nother level, right? Like the level of violence, the seriousness. So for me, it was like, I remember just I'm very observant, right? And just being careful. I was always thinking that like longevity, like I would see people like get themselves in situations where they wreck and um, and so for me, it's just like just trying to be smart and at the same time, like, doing whatever is necessary to survive. And I remember, you know, just having an attitude where like I don't have anything to lose. So, I participated in a lot of stuff, ended up in a whole lot of times in the shoe. And I ended up spending like 18 years of my 22 on level fours, right? So, um, that it was a lot of the same for many years for me because I didn't have hope of getting out, right? But I think just with maturity, right, and just being honest with yourself, there's those moments when you're by yourself or perhaps you're up thinking late at night or whatever, you receive a letter, but there's those moments where you know you stop and you reflect on your life and you're like, man, like I really like spent so many years of my life in here, right? And mm, deep down inside, like wanting something else, right? Like just being honest, like, nobody wants to spend their life in prison. And so, but at the time I couldn't see it. It wasn't anything that I seen that was possible, like anything attainable. I was like, I'm not ever gonna get out. However, I want to be the best person that I can, right? Like I still want to better myself. And for me, that meant like educating myself. Like, you know, for people that aren't familiar with like prison, a lot. So, you know, prior to them like having college programs in prison, education, a lot of it consisted of just reading. You know, I already had graduated in CYA, so I didn't go to education. So you know, spending a lot of time in the homeless shoe, it was those men around me that would share books with me and you know have conversations about you know history or politics and you know different things. And so that really opened my mind. And I never excelled in school growing up because I didn't attend school because I was always incarcerated or kicked out, right? And for me, you know, it just being so much spending so much time in the cell. I remember like I'm young. I'm like I can't sit still. Like I just want to be doing something all the time. But you know, you're stripped of all these property, and you're left with a few possessions, which you know, some of it are like a couple of books. Sometimes you're only allowed one book in certain places, right? And at some point, you're like, okay, you're gonna grab that book and you're gonna read it. You don't care what it is. It could be a romance book. It could be anything, a novel, some. And I remember like one of the first books I read was just a political science book, right? And then being sent to the shoe and another guy sending me a sociology book. And for me, like not having a high level of education and growing up and stuff, right? I was very limited in my vocabulary, so I wasn't familiar with a lot of the words. And I remember just like struggling to read, but like being so interested in it because like I have a very curious mind and I like to understand things and just like it did something to me where now like I had a thirst for knowledge and little by little like you know those guys around me would encourage me like hey you don't understand it like grab a dictionary and same thing like my mom or my grandma would say right when I was growing up like you know this is what you do and so you know it took I spent a lot of time reading books and I ended up you know loving them and so for me even when I was placed back in the mainland on these yards we spent a lot of time locked down or a lot of time in the south and for me, I didn't spend a lot of time watching TV or stuff like that. My mindset was like, if it wasn't going to help me in life, then I didn't give time to it, right? So I spent a lot of time reading, a lot of time like exercising or drawing and stuff like that. And so that's how I got by for many years. And I think for me, my change came with just maturity, right? And like I said, like having those thoughts like man I want something better than this or but at the same time like I said I couldn't see that I couldn't visualize it for so many years so for me my goals and I think for me it was like setting little goals and one of them was like well let me enroll in school once college programs became available and so the first time I enrolled was in 2015 when I was in Salinas Valley and it was development class right a psychology class and I remember just reading that textbook and just being fascinated by like the theories about like child development, the importance of certain milestones that need to be met during a child's development, and just reflecting on it and thinking like, wow, like now I understand where things went wrong, you know, in my upbringing, right, or where things could have been different. And I remember thinking like, wow, if I'm ever a parent, like how this information is like really useful, right? So that you can nurture your child and just raise them and give them the best environment possible, so they could, um, you know, grow up in a healthy environment and have a better chance of being successful, right? So for me, like I really like loved like just psychology, right? Just lifespan psychology, abnormal psychology, and I started taking different courses as well, right? I already had read a lot of like culture, Mexican culture, history, Latin America, and a lot of different forms of government, right? Different governments around the world. And so, you know, I had an interest, and so, and you know, with education, it just starts like opening, expanding your mind, and you start looking at the world a little differently, right? And at others, like especially with psychology, you start understanding yourself better. Um, yeah, I remember just like taking the abnormal psychology and then you know how now when I see people with mental illnesses, I understood it, and it gave me like compassion towards them. Right, I was able to be compassionate and be like, you know what, this is not something that they can control, and not something that they ask for. You know, this is something that developed in them a lot of times it's due to trauma and stuff. And so, just having compassion and having more understanding and being patient and not judging people. Same thing with like substance abuse when they talked about substance abuse and disorders, right? Substance disorders. Um, understanding for me. It gave me an understanding where like, okay, I was able to my dad and not hold to that resentment that I had held towards him, right? For not being the father that I needed growing up. And for me, it gave me a better understanding that, it's something that it's very hard to overcome. The effects that, and not only that, I also had experience with substance abuse, so I knew it firsthand, right? So, and it allowed me to just be understanding that, you know, it wasn't a matter of him picking drugs over his family. It was a matter of him being trapped in this addiction, which made him unfit to be the father that he should have been, right? And just having that understanding, I was able to just let go and not hold, any time of resentment towards him. And even now, like I love my dad no matter what, right? Like he's my father and stuff. And so that's what education did for me. And like just fast forwarding it right to a couple years later, I earned my AA degree. I heard of a BA program on the 3 yard, which for me that was another goal. Like, okay, let me stay out of trouble so that I could find myself, get an override from a level 4 to a level 3, and enroll in this program. And it occurred right in 2000, I think 19 or so. I received the override, the level 3 at Lancaster that had the Cal State LA BA program, and it was supposed to start that year, but because of COVID, I think it got pushed back like 2 years. But finally, it started. Okay, and while I was there, I also participated in a dog training program. Throughout the years, I had already done like a lot of self-help groups, and so, like I said, I went through the board system 3 times, and it was finally on my third hearing that I was granted parole in 2023 last year. And when I was granted parole, I already was halfway through my BA degree. So when I was released, I immediately went to campus like the second day, and I already was enrolled. I got enrolled in classes, took care of everything that I had to do as far as like paper work and enrollment. And I think I begun classes like 2 weeks later. And so,
Can't wait.
yeah.
That's good.
That's actually where we met
And
on
so we met on campus.
on campus.
Yeah,
both,
Amazing.
both working towards our BA degree.
yeah.
That's amazing. Tell me how that happened. How did you meet? I
So
mean, on campus, but tell me that the day you guys met. Can you remember?
yeah, yes.
Yeah, so we went to so actually the very first time we met
Mhm.
was very brief, and it was at
State
Cal
Fullerton.
State Fullerton, and they were showing my homeboy's documentary. It's called Five Block, and Eddie was in it, and so we met very briefly. We didn't really even speak. I just went on there, and I was able to get a phone call from my homeboy, and then put it on the microphone so that people can hear him speak. And then I took off, and we didn't really like, that was it. But then when we went to orientation, he that's where we met, right? And then
Yeah.
I didn't know where my class was, my first time being on that campus, and I was kind of lost, and Eddie kind of was like,
I'll help you. Yeah. So yeah.
Eddie was very helpful, I think. And and then he remembered, oh yeah, you were at Cal State Fullerton for that event.
Symposium.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh okay, and then we just kind of hit it off, and we've been inseparable ever since. And for anybody that goes to school, like as an older individual, it's difficult, right? It's hard, like and we work also, and so I think we kind of uh, we got a bond instantly just because of what we've been through together, and then almost having the same goals. So it was like an immediate bond. And it's really I think it's important to have a partner that kind of understands, where you've been and what you've gone through. It takes a certain individual to really understand what it is to be like incarcerated for an extensive period of time. And it's not for everybody, but for us, like, we're able to encourage each other, support each other, and just really be there for each other. And we're lucky that we found each other, because I believe we both needed uh, each other.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
you guys
a beautiful
really
thing.
balance each other out
Yeah.
and works. Like that's almost like a magical thing, you guys meeting, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what? And one thing I could say is like, when I met her, like my intentions were like, oh, let me, she was attractive. Obviously, like I found her attractive, and I remember seeing her, and I was already in orientation, and I think I already had been at that school for like a semester. So she was the new student coming in, and I wasn't even sure if she was a student because like I remember like looking at her and her appearance and thinking, wow, like she's dressed really, like really sharp, professional looking. Um, like I didn't know who she was, but I seen her sitting there and I approached her like, hi, how you doing? And my name's Eddie, and like just asking like, oh, are you here for orientation? Like I didn't know she was a staff there or what. And it turns out she was a student. And then afterwards, like she needed help in like locating some class. She wanted to see what buildings her classes were going to be in because she's going to be starting school. And I told her, yeah, I know her. I was already familiar with Walker. And during that first walk, like we start talking like, oh yeah, well, where are you from, or what school did you come from, and just like little stuff like what's your major, right? And just they're talking about school mainly, and then I think like she mentioned, I realized, oh, you know what, I think I met you before. You were at Cal State Fullerton for that symposium that one day. Okay, cool, and so. Um, from then on, I think from that we exchanged numbers. Like, oh, if you ever need anything, like whatever, like I'm always here. Like you could, reach out to me. And I think like from then on, I would see her like maybe like twice a week, like 2 minutes in between class, and I'll walk into her car or pick her up. But we developed a friendship, and I remember like always looking forward to seeing her, even if it was just 15 minutes. Like,
Right.
like she mentioned, like we're older than a lot of students there. We're not the only ones, but I mean, for the most part, like most of the students were like in their 20s or like 18, 19 years old. And so, I talked to everybody, but at the same time, I didn't relate to everybody, right? And when I met her, like we had this instant connection. And like she mentioned, as we got to know each other, I think, we realized like, wow, we have so many things in common, right? Like our upbringing, our background, but our past experience, but a lot also had to do like our goals in life, like what our goals are now, right? And then like I said, we had a connection, and it just developed into more, and we started spending more time, and so eventually we got together, right? And then even after we got together, spending more time and still learning more about each other, and supporting one another, like she wants to do her photography. That wasn't something new to me, right? And I really appreciate it, and it's something that it's a new experience to me. But, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying learning about. She's been showing me how to photograph, right? Like using the computer, her camera, excuse me, and even like editing and like going with her on these photo shoots, and being like her assistant, right? And so now we've become like a team where we go to these photo shoots, and we work together, and like we're in sync. Like she does a lot of times, she doesn't have to ask. Like I already know like the role that I'm supposed to be playing, and so, we help one another, and vice versa. There's something that I got going on that there's an interest in. And then I think, like, for me, I had met a lot of people in like the higher education community. And so I was, at different schools that we would get invitations like to different conferences. And she started attending some of those with me. And then we started getting invited to speak at certain places. And so both of us had different contacts, and we started going everywhere as a team, as a couple, and being involved in the community. And so that's where we're at now.
It's beautiful. You guys really complement each other,
Yeah.
and your photographs, I mean, just captivate the culture like completely. Just absolutely beautiful. It really, I mean, I'm fascinated by how a photograph can tell a story. Just looking at it for really, it can draw you in, and you can just be staring at it for so long, and it speaks volumes, to what you're doing and the passion behind it. Tell me what it is for you guys. You both have been able to go back in and speak, right, within the
Yes.
prison system, and what is that like for you?
Yeah.
So for me, it was hard at first just going back into that environment because it takes your soul back into a stressful and negative and difficult, you know, experience that we went through. And but I think the most important thing that gives us it heals us to go back in because we're giving back to our community, you know, our formerly incarcerated community, and we try to share our stories with them, and we try to bring a little bit of hope inside, and we try to share our experiences of what it's like to be out here, just to kind of help people that are about to get out or are trying to get out, because you know, when you're in prison for a long time, you're about to be released, or you're almost coming in, it's not as easy as you would think it is. You get a lot. Your mental, you just go through a lot, right? You get these anxiety. I suffered from anxiety before I was released, and then you're scared, you're nervous, you don't know what's waiting for you on the outside, because you know we were in prison for so long. It's a world in its own in prison, right? You forget what it's like to be outside because you're in just in a different world. It's nothing you've ever known, and you keep those worlds separated, so you kind of forget little things, you know. Like I remember going into a store when I first got out, and there were so many people, and they're moving so fast, and everything's there's all this color, right? Because you're when I was in prison, I saw three colors. It was gray, white, and blue, and so like you're having all these experiences. I had panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and you know, those are mental health issues that you don't even know how to kind of handle that, and it's difficult for somebody who's getting out, who's been incarcerated for a long time. And so I try to share those experiences, you know, to other women that were locked up, just to kind of like get them ready for that change that they're gonna do. And you know, it's always good for you to hear it firsthand what it's like from somebody that you know, right? It gives you like a personal kind of uh, just like help. And
Right.
and so and it's a difficult thing. It's not as easy as you would think. Like you know, anxiety attacks take take your breath away. Not only your breath away, but your ability to think straight. And so just preparing yourself for moments like that, and kind of like knowing certain coping skills so that you can get through them, it's helpful to individuals. And so I try to kind of share my experiences with that, so they kind of know what to expect, so that it makes it a little bit easier to transition. And then I always promote education, just like Eddie, just because it changed my life. It expanded my brain, and it helped me, um, you know, with empathy and compassion, and you know, it helped me change my, I would say, my criminal thinking. You know, like it gave me a different perspective, and so those are things that helped me. So I figured if it helped me, then it might help others, and so I try to share that as well. And you know, I think I think just it's difficult getting out. It's not as
Yeah.
easy as people think it is. Like you just don't get out, and your life is better. Like you have struggles, right? You get out with $200 gate money, and you're expected to like
Yeah.
that's what you're given, right? Like you have your prison clothes and you know, like sweats or whatever, and you have $200 gate money, and you're expected to survive off of that.
And then there's
And
It's
and the resources for
yeah.
women, especially when I got out there, it was non-existent. A lot of the programs are for men, and so I didn't have any sort of help whatsoever when I first got out. And it was, it was difficult. Like, but I also knew what I wanted out of life. I knew that I did not want to give away my second chance at life, and I would do anything in a positive way to not go back. And so I think I started my job before my ID got mailed to me. And
Really?
I got lucky with that because I got hired at a mom and pop shop where they didn't ask for my ID until like right before they were gonna pay me, and so that's when my ID eventually came. So it all worked out right, and then that was my first job, and then I, once I got back in the groove of working, I think after 6 months of working, I got a few raises there, and I was like, oh, I told myself, you know what, I could do better, and so I applied at a law firm, and I just felt like I just needed a chance to show like I could do this, right? I know what I can do, and I'm a hard worker, and so I remember going into that interview to the law firm, right? I was so scared. I was beyond terrified, right? And you have to understand that I only had 6 months work experience, right? Because I had just gotten out, and it had been 12 years, and so I went into that interview, and the law firm was owned by a woman, and she's the one that interviewed me, and even that in itself is terrifying, right? Like the owner is interviewing you, and so she, what surprised me was that she loved me like immediately. She's like, "Oh, you're a perfect fit. We're gonna start you here, and you just have to go through, the drug test and the background check, and you can start as soon as we get that back." And as soon as she said background check, I was like,
Mm.
"Oh my
Right?
god! Oh no! I need this job, right? Like, oh, my life is ruined." So I had a split second to tell her the truth or not tell her, and I made that decision to just kind of tell her the truth. And I told her, my situation, that I had just been out for 6 months, and then she just kind of asked me like what happened, with my past, and I was just kind of honest as I could be, and she stood up, and so like I didn't know what to do, so I stood up, and then she gave me a hug. She showed me empathy and compassion, and to receive that when you first get out, it was overwhelming and beautiful at the same time, and so like I hugged her back because I was like in that moment, and what she did was she gave me a chance, and she told me if I passed the background check that I would be able to work, and luckily the background check was 7 years, and so I was hired. And I started at the lowest position, and and within 1 year, I had gotten 3 or 4 raises, and I had gradually moved up to very good positions in that law firm, to the point where I couldn't. There was no higher position for me other than like either becoming a paralegal or becoming a lawyer. And so after I think 3 or 4 years, I decided it was time for me to find another job, and so then I became a legal coordinator at another firm, and then after that job, I got a few raises there. I worked really hard there, and then I decided it was time for me to go again and find something even better, and then now I'm at the job where I'm at now, and I'm very happy. And throughout all these jobs, I was also going to school, and I just keeping myself busy, so busy that I couldn't that my life was so busy I would not there was no way for me to go back to prison because I was just so busy, empowering myself and building my self-esteem and building my career that I didn't have there was no way for me to fall back into my lifestyle. And I think that's what kind of it really helped me, just staying that busy, working very hard, and going to school for full time. I think
Yeah.
that helped me out a lot. And then it got to the point where I think one of my friends had asked me if I still photograph. She needed some pictures, and I had totally even forgotten that I was a photographer and a video editor before I got incarcerated. And so when she asked me that, I was like, "Oh my God!" Like a light bulb went off. Like, why am I not photographing? Right? It's my art. And so once I decided that I was going to photograph again, I had to sit down and really think about how I wanted to photograph, what I wanted to photograph, and what I wanted to tell with these photographs. And so my photographs are not just what's the word? They're not empty. I
Right.
put a lot of thought into it. I put my heart into it, and growing up a Mexican child being raised by immigrant parents, we faced a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of prejudice. Um, I saw a lot of poverty. I just saw the lack of resources for that community. I saw how people looked at us, looked down at us, and I wanted to change that narrative with my photography because I believe that my culture is beautiful in ways that um, need to be shown, right? And that's what I try to do is shine a light on what I think is beautiful, and definitely I feel like my culture is beautiful. We're a people that are rich in resilience and perseverance and hard work, and I wanted to definitely show that a chola and a chola. It doesn't have to be negative. There's a beauty there. There's a lot of adversity, a lot of hardships that we face it, and still we persevere. And so that's that's what I photograph, the strength and the beauty that's in my culture.
Right, right. I can definitely see that in your photographs. It's like it showcases everything perfectly. Everything, every photo tells a story. You know,
Yeah,
definitely. So bravo to you. That's amazing. Uh,
thank you.
I'm so happy to be talking to you about that. Eddie, going back, and speaking, when you guys go back into the prisons, was it sort of the same experience for you? Was it a little bit
Well, yeah, and you
nerve-wracking?
know what? So when I was incarcerated, like I didn't see myself coming back only because I was like, I want to stay away from prison. Like I had spent so much time.
Right,
But one thing that like throughout the years, I always read about like social movements, like being involved in activism, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, especially when it comes to our community, like people of color, our formerly incarcerated communities. Um, so for me, although I told myself I would never go back, at the same time, you know, in my heart, that's what I wanted to do, right? Like when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, um, uh, I didn't have to like really think about it. It was like, yeah, I just followed my heart. Like although I'm free, like I'm aware of the fact that there's still all those men and women in there that are hanging on to that hope of coming home one day, right? And reuniting with their families or living the life that you know, they want to live out here, right? And build a new life out here. And then there's those families that have waited for them throughout all these years, right? And I know how it is, just our own experience. We experienced that our families held out to that hope. And so, you know, the opportunity presented itself to go back in and went in. And just like Mia, like, I didn't tell anybody I was going to go back in. I went into the level 4 right there at Lancaster to B yard. And a lot of the guys that I was with incarcerated were still there. Many of them I had known for years, like throughout different prisons. And they were surprised at first, like, hey, yeah, we didn't know you were gonna come in. But it felt good. Like I was kind of like torn because I was like, you know what, I'm happy to be here, but at the same time, I felt sad, right, knowing that these men are still here, like the same guys are still here. Um, even the guys I didn't know, like when I went in and I spoke to them, and my whole message was like that all you matter, like everybody here, like I don't even care if I know you or not, like we're here because we care, because we love them, and it's like they matter and they're important, right? And it's just to encourage them, like what, like um keep holding on to that hope, and keep doing the work that you're doing, and eventually everything's gonna fall in place. Like we all have our own time. Like you can't sit there and compare and be like, well, that guy committed that crime. Why is he gonna go home before me if his crime is worse? Like you can't do that. And I tell people, like no, like do what you need to do. And just make smart choices. Make wise choices. Right now is a time where people are getting the opportunity to come home, and so we don't know how long that's gonna last. It could easily turn the other direction. And once again, you know, um, they make it hard for people to come home, right? So right now we have a chance, and so there's programs available, and it's baby steps. It's like what, like let me do this program, and let me do this next one, and just setting these little goals, and like I say, eventually things will fall into place, and you're gonna find yourself in a position favorable, and it's like when you go before that board, you're gonna come home, and for even the guys that don't have a parole date, right? Like they have life without, like even those, like I've seen so many men, like good people, right? And there's women as well, like they just were consistent. They stayed on this path of trying to like better themselves, and doing everything that they can, right? And for me, it's easy. Like if that's all that the board is requiring, that you go spend 2 hours of your your day at a class or whatever, and they do it. And for me, honestly, it was like uh motivating me at that time was my family. Like what, like I'm absent. My parents are getting older. My grandparents, I want to see them. And so, and a lot of these men and women, same thing. You have those moments, and they're kind of like wake up calls. And those are the moments that you really feel like you realize, like my actions are affecting my family. Like I'm absent. I need to be in their lives, right? And so, it's going in there and just giving hope to these men. And I was like her when I was in there. I didn't do all my years, being clean, and staying out of trouble. Like many of them know me the way that I was. Um, and so, and a lot of them, and change doesn't happen overnight. It takes years, right? And you work on one thing, and some things take longer. And even now, I have my flaws, and there's things that I continue to work on, right? So that it was a good feeling, but at the same time, like I said, you're filled with you leave with a feeling of sadness, knowing like, man, we're getting to go home. And a lot of these guys, that some of them that you've gotten to know more on a personal level, that you consider like you love them like brothers, right, or sisters, and you're like, man, I'm gonna have to say bye. But we welcome everybody's phone calls. I'm saying, when they do call, and if they need a resource, and we know it, like we connected with them. One of the harder things was like going to the juvenile hall and talking to the kids. Like we went to a unit where it was kids about 15, 16, 17-year-olds who we have been hearing to see if they're going to be tried as an adult, and are looking at life sentences, right? And hey,
It's
yeah.
heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because we've been there and we know, we know what they're thinking, we know what they're
Hmm.
feeling, we know their emotional state,
Hmm.
and that was really difficult for us to go in uh, on our hearts, hard on our hearts. Uh, but we went in there, we shared our story, we shared what we're doing now, we shared what education did for us, we shared coping skills to get us through hard situations in there. Like, uh, I used to, well, Eddie and I both used to draw, and that's a really good coping skill to have because you're focused on your art, and then reading, how reading really helped us in there. Between me and Eddie, we've read millions of
I've read
millions
a
of
lot of books.
books,
Yeah.
but it helps. And then music in there, so there's things that we shared that helped us cope while we were fighting our sentences, or once, even when we were convicted. And we try to give them hope. We try. So a lot of the time, these kids come from broken homes. They come from, um, not the healthiest environment and their children, and so a lot of them just want to be heard. They just want to be able to talk to somebody, or to somebody who understands, and it, it we did it. We went in there to be of service to these kids, and although it was difficult on our hearts, like we did it for them.
Yeah, and you know what, like for me, I think it was important like to just convey to them like, you know what, we've been in your shoes. I grew up in the system, in and out as a kid, right? And I remember thinking like my life is over. I got sentenced to life as a young man, right? But it's not, and it's just let them know like life isn't over. Like whatever the outcome, I hope everybody gets released, and these kids are given a chance where they don't have to serve a life sentence. But whatever the future holds, like you know what, like try to be the best version of yourself every day. Like try to better yourself, try to educate yourself, right? It's not going to be easy. There's going to be hard moments, but you're going to get through it. You're going to get through it. And then it's also like just trying to instill in them, and many of them already know, like, having to support one another, that, camaraderie, like build camaraderie amongst each other and support one another, right? Because these are the things that for me, and as for me, like she explained with like women, a lot of times, like, it was those around us that supported us, right? We supported one another. Like we find ourselves in the same situation, and it just makes it easier to cope, right? We're able to cope with things with our experience better because those around us are going through the same thing. And there's times where we're like, we just need somebody to talk to, or sometimes it's them that they need somebody to listen to. And so just being there, and realizing like, hey, it's not look at one another like we're here against one another. Like we're on the same situation, and let's look at the bigger picture, right? And let's try to make the best of this, right? And try to have to positive possible, right? So that was important, and I think a lot of them, our message was well received by them. And one of the things, like I remember, like as we were leaving, like she hugged one of the kids, and her like being a mother, right? I think that's what she was feeling like. She's hugging these teenagers who a lot of them do need love in their life, right? They need a mother or father figure, or perhaps you know they lack that, or whatever it is. And I remember one of them telling her like, "Are you guys gonna come back?" And like leaving, like kind of like feeling heartbroken. And they really need people to come in. We're fortunate to have that access to go in there, right? But we know how it feels. Like I remember how grateful I would feel sometimes, like when a stranger would come in and give us their time out of their day that they don't have to, because they wanted to just out of the kindness of their heart be there, be able to visit us and stuff, and share their time with us. And so it was real meaningful for us. I think that's some of the most meaningful stuff that we're able to get involved in, is just like being able to be involved with like going into prisons and speaking with people, and a lot of time like answering some of the questions, like she said, some of them are like very they're anxious, and they're like, I don't know what to expect. Like we know the feeling. I remember myself feeling like that, and not being able to sleep like days before getting released, and even afterwards, and like afterwards, like feeling like I'm very guarded, very hyper vigilant, and at the same time, it's like, okay, I don't want to go back to prison. I had to be very careful, right, out here, and you don't know what to expect, right, and but I think at the same time, it's like in every situation, no matter where I've been, whether I was in the shoe, in lockdown, or in the yard, or out looking at life, and through all these difficult moments, like um, there was always somebody there that showed up, like to be kind to you, to give you words of encouragement, whether it was a letter I received from my mom, my grandma, a cellmate. Sometimes there were strangers that happened to just notice, like, what's going on with this person? Hey, are you all right? And so, um, even that, like, you know, we're like that, very much like that still this day. Like we go around the block for a walk, and if we see somebody, like there's times that we've seen people just drunk on the floor, and a complete stranger, and we'll approach them like, hey, Like, are you all right? Do you need help?
We offer water.
Yeah, like there's people that pass by and we'll give them a cold water bottle because we know that, it's not much, right? But it's needed, right? And so, we try to be like that with people, and there's people that are kind with us in return. And I think a lot of it just has to do with like that energy we project, and saying what we put out there as well, right, into the universe. And so, we've been very fortunate. We've been blessed, and we've gotten support from a lot of people. um, we do encounter sometimes like everybody else in life, people that aren't supportive, and it's all right. Like, what we do isn't for everyone. There's people that aren't gonna understand it, but there's those that that do understand it and appreciate it, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, and so although we have a lot of speaking engagements, we share our story, but we also advocate a lot because there is a lot of things that need that that need awareness, right? There like the women's prison. Uh, there's rapists. There's men that were convicted for rape walking the yard with women because they're claiming they're transgender now. They're manipulating to be able to walk on a women's prison yard, and that there's we've got to protect these women. These are women that were, already sexually abused prior to getting in prison, sexually abused in prison by the COs, and now being just walking the yard with rapists. It's traumatizing. This is not uh, for whatever reason
Yeah.
the legal system has failed our women, and so we bring advocacy, and we try to speak on this so that there's more awareness of what is actually happening at a women's prison. There's a lot of sexual abuse that happens there, from the COs, and I've been there, so I know what happens. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen a full grown man walk the yard there at CIW, and then the women that have to be fearful and live in fear. Like, I remember this man, you know, um, telling other women, like, "Oh, I'll rape you too." Like, what's happening in a women's prison? There needs to be awareness so that we could try to change the situation, because now there's more men that are they've learned from the first man that walked in the yard, and so now other men are manipulating this law, and now also being transferred more into the women's prison. So there's more than one man walking in a women's prison, and they're in there. We need to protect our women, right? There was a year that I was at CIW where there was so many suicides, and nobody was helping our women. Like, what is happening in here? We're not even we're worthless in there, right? And nobody wanted to help us, like what the cause is. So I try to bring awareness on that level too. And there's just so much going on in a women's prison that our women, they need our help. And so I'm out here trying to advocate on these issues and bring awareness to it. And so although we have a lot of speaking engagements and we try to help our community, we also advocate for our community.
Yeah, and I think getting to just adding to what Mia said. Recently we were involved with the we went to Sacramento this past week to support AB 280, right, known as the California Mandela Act, which set certain limitations on how officials use solitary confinement, right, to practice. It would create oversight. This bill would create oversight where the department would have to report, who they're placing in solitary confinement, for what reason, and for how long. It would also protect certain populations, for instance, anybody the age of 25 and younger. And this is, at different detention centers, from juvenile hall, from county jail, immigration detention centers, right? So whether they want to call it the box, high power, anywhere where you're kept in solitude for an extensive period of time in solitary confinement, it would protect these population, right? And also those 16 and older, anybody with a mental or physical disability, because a lot of times, like, I remember just being in the hallway and shoot, and people with mental disabilities, which some COs not understanding, they're not trained, right? They're not educating this for them. They think it's somebody just acting up or whatever. And for them, their solution to many a lot of times was like, let's place them in ad sec or shoe. I've seen them physically abuse some of these men in there, because for whatever reason, like they're triggered, and they behave in a certain way that, okay, um I'm gonna rough them up. They tell themselves like, okay, we're just gonna go in there and cause harm on them or whatever. And so there's just so many things that shouldn't be occurring, right? These are vulnerable populations that, instead of receiving help, they're being abused, right? Mentally, physically, and then also, and this is one that Mia, like, shared her experience, like giving birth handcuffed to a bed, and then being in solitary confinement, pregnant. This bill would also protect pregnant women, where there would not be they cannot be placed in solitary confinement, right? And not only are you placing the mom, but you're also placing the baby
At risk.
confined, right, in these conditions, right? Which they're affected by it as well, right? All the stress that the mother's undergoing. So this is why, when we went over there, we're able to speak, share our personal experience. Me as a young child, like already getting placed in the box, you know, in the home, the county, or in YA, and going to shoe and all these things. And I remember as I was young, I normalized that, just thinking like, oh, it's part of jail, right? Um, and it wasn't until, me becoming older, and being educated, and learning, like, okay, I'm starting to see the effect, and how it had a detrimental effect on me and on others that I witnessed around me, right? And just being hyper vigilant, and sometimes I was with cellmates where you don't know nobody's mind state. You don't know what's going on in their mind state. You're spending extensive period of time with somebody in the cell, and it could go either good or bad in there. Like, there's things that trigger people. From the smallest thing could escalate and turn into violence, right? And so for me, I remember like being a young man the first time I went to, and it was always like I would get a new cellmate, and I remember like having to size them up, and like, all right, like, let's see what's gonna occur with me and him, right? I mean, yeah, you welcome into that person into your cell, you're cordial with them, you're respectful, you share everything with them, but you don't know that person's mental state or anything, or what they're going through, and there's always this potential for violence. So you're constantly studying your cellmate, right? And this is not normal. You're on high alert all day. Um, there's hostility with the correctional officers as well, because they have a certain attitude towards you, right? And in an environment where, like, you're gonna do whatever is necessary to survive, and it could go either direction. Like your mental state is gonna decline, where you're gonna really start deteriorating, or like myself, what it did to me is I became more violent. Like it caused me to become a more violent person, where in order to survive, I told myself, okay, then I need to attach myself from my emotions. I need to attach myself from the outside world, because that's not going to help me right now. What I need to be concerned is, like, just being prepared mentally and physically for whatever's necessary, whether it's with the guards, whether it's with the inmate, to survive, because you're seeing um, violent things occurring around you, right? Even though you're in isolation, and a lot of it, um, you know, it's caused because, like I say, you're spending this time in this environment that isn't healthy, um, and it causes people to really, like, it's like some people feel cornered, and any little thing is that you react violently, right? And so we share these things, and I share to them the importance of, like, this bill, how at that age when I was so young, instead of receiving help addressing the issues that I had with myself, right? Especially like being a young man, have control their emotions, have any healthy coping tools, right, to deal with situations. Instead of receiving that help, I was placed in this environment that caused me to get worse. Um, and develop, hyper, becoming hyper vigilant, PTSD from, like, just being on a state of alert all the time, and not only like witnessing violence, but at times being involved in violence myself, right? Those things are not normal, and for anybody that spends a long time in that environment, it's going to affect you, right? Even after you leave that place. And so it's very important that this bill would protect them. I told them that it did nothing to correct any of the behavior that led me to be placed in solitary confinement. And it wasn't until like I had access to rehabilitative programs and education that, um, I started working on myself and trying to transform myself, right, and becoming better. So, I think for me, it's like placing emphasis on like, rehabilitation, and that's something that decades have shown, studies have shown, really hasn't made prison safer. It hasn't done anything to deter people from, you know, uh, participating in rule breaking rules in prison or any of that, right? And I think studies have shown that it's rehabilitation is actually these programs that really has helped in reducing the violence in prison. It has led to people, transforming their lives and being released to prison, being able to, transition better into society, right? And be able to just become, normal members of society. And that's a big difference compared to like somebody that doesn't receive that help. And some people parole from the shoe or the hall, and it's like, what can we expect as a society if this person was never given the help that they need, right? And they're gonna get released, from these environments that a lot of times cause us to develop, mental issues or become more violent and stuff. And it's not a good situation, right? So we went over there and we got involved, and it's very meaningful for us, especially like, Mia talking about like, her experience giving birth, handcuffed to a bed, and um, that, and then like for those that don't know, there's also another bill that's proposed, right? And it's called excuse me, so I could get it right. It's called AB 2527, right? Which basically um allows for the department officials to place women still, and empowers them to place women in solitary confinement for up to 5 days, right? And so for us, it's basically like, it's another version. It's a watered down version, which they're trying to pass, and all those that support the Mandela Act, the California Mandela Act, are like, no, it's not acceptable. We're still pushing for the governor to sign AB 280, everything that's included in that package, right? All these protections of certain populations, the oversight it would create, and even the how it would define solitary confinement is. And this is all based on like, the international standards, how it's been defined, through the international community, right? And so, which it defines it like after a certain amount of days, it's considered solitary confinement, and it's a more humane standard where it requires that people are let out for a certain X amount of time, right? And that's having to spend this so much time confined in the cell. And it also, there's a part of it that includes like, rehabilitative programs and access to, programs like that, right? So that's we're strong supporters of the bill, AB 280. The governor vetoed it last year. We're hoping that we could gain support, and you know he signed off on this, right? I think so. Like for us, it's easy. Like it's inhumane, the conditions of solitary confinement. But for other people, it's like a very controversial, a political issue. In California, the CO union is it's a strong unit. They got a lot of backing. They got a lot of power, and I think it's very important that we have so many family members out here. We have so many organizations. In the past, look what we've been able to do as a community, right? We were able to pass the youth offender bills. Um, so many things. We got the phone calls for prisoners, right? So many things, even like all these resentencing laws and stuff. Like we've accomplished a lot as a community, and I think it's important, like that once again, like everybody to support this, and let's look at the bigger picture, right? Like we all we participated in the hunger strikes in 2011, 2013, which led to a settlement. Um, but still a lot of these things are, still a lot of things were not fulfilled that the department said they would. And there's further work that needs to be done when it comes to like this practice of solitary confinement. And so, we're really hopeful that in the near future it gains the support that it needs to pass.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why conversations like this are so important. and you guys shining on that particular bill and going back in and speaking to people that are still behind the walls is so important. And I hope people really watch this and look this Mandela Act AB 280, right?
Yes.
Look into it and make sure that this passes because it is very important. And
Yes. And I
it's
just wanted to, I'm sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I wanted to add, for those who are like aren't familiar like with prison and the way that that it operates, right? A lot of people are like they watch shows and a lot of times they like to say like we house the worst of the worst here, right? And people don't understand it or sometimes don't even believe until they see it for themselves that a lot of times people are placed in solitary confinement because you're considered a threat, right? And the threat could mean that perhaps sometimes you might file a grievance or because you're able to write, litigate and write documents and file lawsuits or whatever, right? Um, for misconduct or anything it may be in there, right? You're retaliated against. If a woman reports misconduct of any sexual misconduct by a CO, they're retaliated against and placed in solitary confinement, right? So a lot of times it's used as a form of punishment. Sometimes when people debrief, part of the debriefing process to get sent to an SNY yard requires them to give information up, right? And so a lot of times, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's fabricated, and when it is fabricated, people are punished for it. If they're giving information about somebody that isn't true, and they're saying that they're involved in whatever illegal activities in prison, that person could be placed in solitary confinement pending investigation. It could get validated for whatever association they may have. And so a lot of times it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person that's in there necessarily broke a rule violation or any of that. So there's several ways that officials, use this to punish certain people, certain populations. In California, one of the last studies revealed that Latinos in the California prison system, we make up 43% of the population, yet we make up 86% of the people in solitary confinement. So you see what populations are being targeted. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, a lot of times it has to do with just information that's fabricated against. And sometimes the officers will be like, "Hey, we know this person's doing this. Do you know this?" And or somebody just make a statement. And so it's abuse. It's a practice. It's abuse. It hasn't shown that prisons are safer because of it, and we really need to you know uh, bring it to an end, right? This practice, and a lot of other states have already laws, that have banned it or have set certain limitations, and so California is behind when it comes to this.
Absolutely, I agree. And Mia, the one thing you had brought up also about the women, being in fear of walking the yard with a convicted rapist being, on in the same area as them. I have contact with a couple women that are in fear of that very thing, and it's a real thing that I'm always cautious. Like you said, like there's a fear of being lashed out at or being even a family member that I have that's incarcerated. They have some grievances, but they have been retaliated against for speaking out on it. I had to even tell one of my tias, hey, you got to kind of fall back because it's getting bad for them.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's true. This is happening.
Yeah. So, I was there when this man first landed at CIW, and they what they could have done. Well, they came from a PCR, the protective PCR, when they're rapists and stuff like that, right? And they they could have put him in ADSEG. They could have put him in a protective custody. Even if he went to a women's prison, they could have put him in a segregated section. But they let him walk the yard. They gave him a woman's cellmate. He's able to have girlfriends in there that don't know any better because they've been manipulated. And they're in now. A lot of them are in fear, and and nobody is speaking for these women that are in constant fear. They're working. We're not just talking about um, we're talking about rapists. We're talking about this man raped a man, and I mean a woman, and then that woman's daughter, and now he's walking the yard and with women. So
Threatening.
like, why is nobody helping our women? Like, when you get convicted, your punishment is to be away from society. You're doing your time in there. But walking around with a man and being in fear of your life like that, it's a very cruel and unusual punishment, and they're getting away with it. And not only are they getting away with it, but now other people are noticing what they can get away with to try to get into the women's prison, and it's becoming um, it's happening more and more. And so now, like, these men that were in protective custody, now that they get a chance to be in the women's prison, they're walking around like they're the king in there, like they have access to all these women. And it's a scary thing because a lot of women come from not the best upbringing. A lot of them were sexually assaulted, sexually abused, and to have to relive it constantly with another man walking the yard with you, it, it's a, it, it's not right. It is not right. And so I'm out here advocating for that. And like, there is retaliation, and then there is, there's all kinds of things that can come my way just for speaking on it. But I choose to be an advocate because I was there. I was there when he first landed, and I know I've seen it with my own eyes, and it is not safe for our women to be in there. And I think that's another thing why. So I'm in school and I'm majoring in psychology. The reason I'm in school for that is because I need the knowledge, right, for behaviorals and just like human life, and so, but I'm taking that into law school so that I come from a place where I can not only have the legal part of it, but have the behavioral knowledge that can help change these laws, these policies that are in place. And I'm working hard towards that goal. And I might not be able to change policy right now, but I am working towards it to do it from a position where I'm able to.
Yes, my respects to you for that. You have a really so many different aspects that you can relate and relay the message of what that looks like that others can't understand. So I love that you're doing that, and what you guys are doing as a couple, as a team. My hats off to you, and I really appreciate you sharing here on Convicted Hearts. Anything I can do to be a part of what you guys are doing, I definitely want to be there. It means a lot to me as well.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We definitely appreciate you giving us a platform to speak.
Yeah.
We're very grateful that you've given us this opportunity, and yeah, thank you so much for letting us speak about the work that we're doing.
Yes.
Thank you for everybody that everybody that has been supportive and just taking the time to listen to
Yeah,
our
I'm
story.
gonna make sure and have your information in the description of this video. And then also, how can people contact you for photo shoots, or can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, and my IG is Lovely Hue Photography. And and so a lot of people don't know why I even named my photography business Lovely Hue, and I don't think I've ever shared it. But when I was in prison, like I mentioned earlier, I only saw three colors, right? So it was gray, blue, and white. A lot of concrete, a lot of razor wire, a lot of chains, and and so hue, um, it's the spectrum of colors, right? And I chose lovely just because like I feel like now that I'm able to have color in my world, I just think that it's beautiful and lovely, and so that's where the name came from, and so um, so every time I mention my business, it's the beautiful world that I live in today. And so, yeah, anybody can follow me on Lovely Hue Photography. You can message me. I try to respond to everybody. And I hope I get some new followers. I'm
You guys
always more followers.
check out her work. It's amazing. I'm telling you right now, like it's breathtaking for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you
I'll
so
have
much.
all that information in the description box. Thank you again. You guys are amazing. And I hope that everyone sees this, follows, and shows some love. And remember to always, always keep your heart convicted.